Welcome to the Leadership Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Jonno White. I'm the founder and principal consultant of Clarity. We are an Australian-based consultancy that works with leaders around the world, and our passion is to invest in people to become everything they're meant to be in order to fill the world with healthy organizations that people love to work for and customers line up to buy from. The goal of this podcast is to invest in you and your leadership. If you're just joining us for the first time, then feel free to check out consultclarity.org. That's our website, consultclarity.org. We have so many free resources on there, the most popular being our 7 Questions on Leadership series. We've had more than 1,500 leaders from around the world in all different sectors give their in-depth answers on leadership, what books they love, what they found most challenging, the most meaningful stories, how they structure their time through the day. That's free, so go and check it out. And we'd love to interview you about your leadership. I believe you have advice from your experience, your context, and your life so far that is important and can help other leaders. It's also a great way to give back. It's free to get involved, and you can do so by going to consultclarity.org/7-questions-interest, or just Google consultclarity.org 7 questions interest and fill out the form that pops up. We have a free resource for you on our website. It's called Leadership Survival Guide. It's a 57-page ebook. It has interviews with 10 world-class leaders, and you can go to consultclarity.org. It's right at the top, and get that today. We also have a daily email that we send out to over 15,000 leaders, and that email contains the highlights, our best content from our podcasts, our blog, my book, the books that we're loving that are out there about leadership. It's also the best way to get access to our masterclasses and workshops before anyone else. And there's also exclusive and limited special options just for subscribers. And you can subscribe by going to consultclarity.org/subscribe. Now, my gift to you is to work incredibly hard to provide the best leadership content I can to invest in you and your leadership. So if you're finding our content helpful, if you find this podcast helpful, then your gift to me could be this. If you do find it helpful, then write a review or rate our content and make sure you subscribe or follow. I can't emphasize enough how helpful that is. It really does help us to get the word out there so we can invest in more leaders to become everything they're meant to be. It also means a lot to me personally when people like you and people in our community share our content on social media. So if you do that, then please do look for me, Jonno White, to tag me, and look to tag Clarity on whatever platform you're on. And our team, including me, I'm always looking to see when people have mentioned us so that I can engage with you. And also we look at sharing content. So if you write something about something we've done, there's also a good chance we'll share that with our followers. So if you could do that, that is a massive, massive help as we try to invest in as many leaders as we can around the world. Last of all, you can check out my book about how to deal with difficult people even if you hate conflict. It's called Step Up or Step Out. It's available on Amazon. You can just look up Step Up or Step Out Jonno White, or you can go to store.consultclarity.org/book and check it out there. I have coached leader after leader after leader, and in more than 50% of the sessions, this topic comes up. How do I deal with this person? I'm finding it really difficult, and I just want to find a way that doesn't blow up to just to have a difficult conversation, to lead them better. How do I do that? There's a 3-step process that I outline in this book that I believe can help you. Okay, let's get into today's episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast. Enjoy. Welcome to another episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast. Today's guest is Terry Sweeney. Terry is the CEO of the Digital Health Cooperative Research Centre, based in Adelaide here in Australia, where I'm based. I'm based up in Brisbane, and it's going to be great to have a chat today about all things leadership. Terry, welcome to the podcast.
Jonno, thanks so much for inviting me. I'm excited to sit down and have a chat with you.
Well, first of all, it'd be great for you to tell our listeners a little bit about who you are, and also for those who aren't, in your industry, tell us a bit about the Digital Health Cooperative Research Centre as well.
Thanks, Jonno. So my current role, I'm the CEO of the Digital Health Research Centre. We're actually the largest digital health collaborative in the world. We get a lot of our funding from the Federal Department of Industry, Innovation and Science. And then the rest of our funding comes from our 74 partners. We have universities, industry partners, and all of the state-based health systems and the Federal Department of Health are all partners as well. And Jono, we tend to kind of just get problems to solve, right? So it's usually a healthcare provider will come to us with a problem that they're struggling with, and we look at how digital technology might be able to help solve that problem or create an opportunity. And we have offices in Sydney, Melbourne, and Adelaide. And I guess our superpower is we don't necessarily solve the problem ourselves, but we bring in the expertise from the ecosystem, in a little bit kind of, like putting a jigsaw puzzle together. And we bring all of that expertise together that solves that problem. But we do it in a way that we can then potentially scale and commercialize that solution or that value that we've created. So another big part of what we do is supporting Australia's digital economy through healthcare innovation. So
Mm.
a big responsibility for creating jobs, attracting global talent into Australia, and developing and stimulating the economy.
Well, I think what you're doing is fascinating. Obviously, it's incredibly important, but also I always find, I guess, when you've got an area where getting things right is so important, and what's more important than healthcare, but you have to be innovating, and embracing things that are cutting edge. But other industries, you can get away with um, making mistakes here and there. But the thing I find most interesting about what you're doing, I guess, is that you're really serving those stakeholders with their issues, knowing that when if we get things wrong in that industry, it can cost people's lives. So getting things right isn't just important; it's actually life and death, which I think is an amazing and important mission.
Thanks, Jono. Yeah, it is interesting. We are, everyone likes to think they're special, and everyone is special, but we think we have that additional responsibility to get things right, or actually to get things wrong. And failure, as we all know, can be
Yeah.
a good and positive thing, and lead to breakthroughs. But how can we innovate and test and fail in the context of healthcare, but do it in a way that's not putting people's lives at risk? So that's another big part of what we look at. And you mentioned there, John, about other industries, and I think we've actually got a lot to learn in healthcare from other industries as well, particularly around the consumer experience, where we're probably lagging behind in health right now. If you think
Hmm.
about the last appointment you had at your GP, or the last appointment you had in a hospital setting, it may not be as streamlined or as a positive experience as it would be, watching a movie on Netflix or buying a
Hmm.
new pair of shoes on Amazon.
Yeah, yeah, that's really interesting, Terry. I'm excited to chat about this actually because I think the tension in everything you've just unpacked is really challenging for you and for leaders in your sector. So I'm keen to really learn from you and have a chat. First, tell us a bit about a day in the life of Terry. What does it look like to be CEO of an organization like yours right now, and anything else you want to share around your personal life? What does a day in the life of Terry look like?
I kind of have attention deficit disorder, John, and I always have since being a kid. So I think for me, it's always been important in what I do for work that allows for that characteristic of who I am. And I think what I'm doing right now kind of does align pretty well with that. So I guess what it means is that there are no 2 days that are the same. I've been in this role now for just a little over 1 year, and I don't think I've had 2 days that are even close to being similar. So I think that's fantastic from a growth and an energy and a motivation point of view. But to give you a bit of a flavour of some of the things that I get involved in here at the CRC and with our partners in the industry, where we've got about 35 projects in flight at the moment, and we have a job to make sure that they're all successful. So, checking in on the project teams, making sure that we're ticking along nicely and what we're doing. I was in a meeting this morning locally here in South Australia on a project that we're doing to develop algorithms to prevent harm to patients in an emergency department based on the way staff are rostered on and how staff are allocated to individual patients. So using artificial intelligence and machine learning for that kind of matchmaking is really, really interesting. So checking in on that and making sure that's going well, and a bit of troubleshooting as and when required. Yesterday, I was called in to give some advice to federal government on COVID response, particularly from a digital point of view. And then this afternoon, I'm speaking with one of the state governments about a partnership to open an innovation centre to look at the commercialisation of digital health and health innovation and creating an industry around that and what that might look at and building the business case for that. So a lot of different things. A big part of what I do is just getting out there, understanding what those problems are that people have, looking for opportunities that might be a win-win between a bunch of our different partners that we can bring together, and hopefully will be a win for us as well as an organisation. So a lot of kind of stakeholder management and really understanding what's making the front line of healthcare tick.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. That's really interesting insight into what you do. Let's chat a bit about your story. So, as you look back, even as far as your childhood, I'd love for you to share some of the moments along the way that really, I guess, led to you becoming the leader and the person you are today, Terry.
Oh yeah. It's an interesting one. Someone when I was really young said to me, don't forget when aliens come down to Earth from another planet, and the door to the spaceship opens, and this little alien kind of walks out and has that first human contact. They're not going to say, "Take me to your manager," and that's something that's really kind of stuck with me in terms of the difference between leadership and management, and they are quite different and separate and not mutually exclusive. People can have abilities in both, but there's definitely a difference there. So I think for me, that little kind of funny comment, also backed up by just working under some extremely interesting and inspirational leaders, has always given me a little bit of an emphasis to become one myself. I'm not saying I am, but I'm giving it a good go. And that ability to get people on board with what you're trying to do, get them bought into the mission, but not doing it because they have to. You work for me, I want you to do this, and therefore you're going to do it. But really kind of learning the ability of or the skill of influence, and getting people to do it because they want to do it, and they may not agree with your decision or where you want to go, but they're bought into you and they're willing to give it a go because they want to follow you. So I've been on the receiving end of that with some amazing leaders as a youngster, and that's really the thing that's inspired me to want to do that. and to get others bought in and to follow and to do some good things.
Yeah, that's so. When you were young, do you remember? I always love hearing from leaders when they sort of realized their own. I guess sometimes it's a feeling that there's a bit of a gift to actually influence people, and other times it's an awareness of this is something I might actually really want to do. Or even sometimes it's a bit of a I don't really want to have influence, but I want to make a difference, and to do that, I'm going to have to. Any stories that come to mind from your childhood or as a teenager?
Yeah, I was involved heavily in sports, Jonno, when I was in and around starting university. So I was fortunate enough to compete in a couple of Commonwealth Games representing England in cycling, and I being in the British Cycling Talent Program from a pretty young age, I was exposed to some really interesting performance coaches, motivational coaches, to really try and get the best out of you in a sport that can be absolutely grueling. And there's no question that competitive cycling is a mind game, and it's more about mental toughness than physical toughness. And you know, your mind will, if your mind gives up before your legs, then you're in trouble. You have this ability, I think, in elite sports, that your body is saying, please just sit down and have a rest, but your mind gets that extra 5 or 10% that you need. So I think for me, I learned quite early on that mental toughness, which I think translates into the business world. That ability to sometimes be single-minded. Have the eye on the goal, and get there. The ability to cut out some of that noise and maybe some of the activity or effort that just isn't really critical to achieving what you want to achieve. And having the mental toughness to get there, and often, because cycling, not everyone realizes that cycling is actually a team sport. Every rider in the team has their own role, and if the team leader wins a stage or a race, then that's a win for the entire team, because someone else has probably killed themselves on a mountain for the other guy or girl to come in behind and actually cross the line first. So it's very much a team sport. So the ability to do that and then pull others along with you, I think very early on, although I didn't realize it at the time, I think that probably gave me a lot of the skills and the framework to translate that into what I'm doing now.
Yeah, that's thank you for sharing that. I can't help but ask, being a sports fanatic, we had the Commonwealth Games up here on the Gold Coast a couple of years ago, a few years ago, and
Yes.
and my wife Liz and I, one of the events we actually went to, which was open for anyone to go to, was we went and watched the cycling, the road cycling race, which was down at on the Gold Coast, and it was incredible. From your time competing at the Commonwealth Games, are there any stories that come to mind that were really, I guess, shaped you from those? I can imagine they would be pretty significant life events to be going and competing there. But then, it'd be interesting to hear you, whether you'd think that, and whether there were any moments that really stood out and have really shaped you becoming who you are today.
Yeah, I think one of the bigger things I took out of it, Jonno, was the you don't always have to be first, and you don't have to always win to achieve what you want to achieve in life, and to feel good about the world. I think I was, in one respect, being able to represent my country and get involved in at a very elite level with com games, and did some professional road racing in and around it, particularly in Europe and the US. In one respect, that's a fantastic achievement. But from another point of view, I didn't win anything. Some people think I'm still cycling after the '94 Commonwealth Games in Vancouver, and I think that success and achievement means different things to different people, and is very, very personal. So I think as someone who was a bit of a journeyman cyclist, who was, not the best, not the worst, did a solid job for the team, probably was not actually going to win anything. I think for me, I learned quite quickly in that environment that winning does not always equal success. Coming first does not always equal success, and success can come in different shapes and forms. And if you make a small contribution to a team that goes on to be successful, then that in itself, can be enough. And again, I think that does translate to what I've done in a more kind of corporate environment, that you've learn your place in the team, and even as a senior leader and a CEO of an organization, I am a member of a team. Learn your place in that team. Learn how you can contribute to the team to make them tick, and to make your organization successful, and control what you can control, because there's a lot of external things out there that no matter what you do, you're not going to have control over that. And I see a lot of people killing themselves trying to get that control or turn things around. And sometimes that's not just not going to happen. But if you do your bit and everyone else in the team does their bit, you've got every chance of being successful. So I guess that was probably another key takeaway from that sporting environment.
Yeah, wonderful. That's really fascinating. I appreciate you sharing that. What about your time now as a leader in I guess in more sort of a corporate and business and healthcare settings? For you, are there any moments that really stand out that have been pivotal for you as a leader, where you saw another leader who you admire handle something in a way that you've never forgotten, or we all have those stories where we drop the ball and we learn sometimes the most from those moments, or see a leader and go, I never want to be like that, because you see how much they leave a wake behind them of pain. Any moments that really stand out for you?
Yeah, I think I was probably around about 2000, 2001. I set up my own software company with a bunch of Irish folks in Dublin. We built that up over a 10-year period, and we were fortunate enough to be acquired at the end of 2011 by IBM. And I think when I look back at my professional career, I think that's probably one of the major highlights. And it's a lot of people's dreams to start up a company and grow it, and have it acquired by a big multinational, and see it grow and prosper from there. And I think what I learned from fellow leaders in that organization was the creating an environment where people are comfortable and happy to give something a try, and to fail, and not be criticized, not be punished, not be judged for that failure. Because for us, that was critical in innovating and developing our software. Is you have to have the ability to fail and learn from that. And I see a lot of organizations, particularly these big corporates, that failure is not an option. If you do fail, they don't take the goodness out of that failure. It's always kind of a black mark against your name and your performance. So in that experience for me, I learned that, and hopefully I demonstrate this as a leader myself, that creating an environment where people feel comfortable enough to fail, feel comfortable enough to really step out and do things that may not be always in someone's kind of swim lane, and as long as it's done in a non-harmful, constructive way, there are no repercussions for doing so, and just allowing people to step up and have a voice, and everyone's important. We made a massive breakthrough in our company because of this guy that we had in as a contractor. He was working 1 day a week. He was kind of a lower level developer, churning out lines of code every day. And there was something that he said that if we hadn't have given him a voice, we wouldn't have gone on to do what we would have done and be successful with the acquisition. So having that environment where everyone has a voice, everyone has a say, and people feel comfortable enough to put their hand up and say, "Hey, I've got a point to make here," and not be judged, even if you don't agree with that point, I think is super important.
Yeah, that's well said. And on that note, I'd love to jump into Leadership Express and just ask you a bunch of questions, and it'll lead to some more interesting conversation. You ready?
Absolutely, let's do it, Jonno.
Okay, Terry, what is a book that you've gifted to other people?
Ooh, I really like a book called Anti-Fragile by Nicholas Taleb. Taleb is, as an economist myself, I have a PhD from Cambridge in economics, and I'm a try-hard economist, though I've never actually done it for work. Really interested in this book, Anti-Fragile. So Taleb and he's a very controversial economist. He looks at how some systems thrive from shocks and volatility and uncertainty. And we live in a pandemic world, right, where there is massive uncertainty. We don't necessarily always know what's going on day to day. And, a lot of people get, they're broken, right, from things that are volatile. But he looks at actually, instead of breaking from volatility, how you're going to adapt and yourself to thrive in an uncertain and chaotic world. And there's no antonym to fragile. So he came up with this concept of anti-fragile, and actually taking that fragility, taking that chaos, and thriving from it rather than actually struggling with it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Great recommendation, Anti-Fragile. What's a recent leadership lesson you've learned for the first time or been reminded of?
I learned because I had just a couple of weeks ago, I had a bad day at the office. I just wasn't in the best of moods, and it made me remember that as a leader, you set the tone for your organization. And if you're normally an upbeat person, which I am, I like to think I'm a high energy, upbeat kind of person. If I'm having an off day, other people see that, and their tone and their motivation can be affected by whether you're having a good day or a bad day. So I was reminded of the fact that others are always watching and are influenced by my mood. So I need to remember and project the right mood, even if I'm having an off day.
Yeah, that's great advice. What's a time management or productivity tip or a tool or resource you use in that space?
Right, that's an interesting one. I like to. I think a lot of people, and I had a habit of this as well, Jonno, is you get into that. I'm going to fill my calendar, and I've got one meeting to the next meeting to the next meeting to the next, and it makes us feel all very important. And this organization can't tick without me because look how full my calendar is. But I don't think we're doing ourselves any favors by that. And I like to put blank spaces in between meetings of 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes. And I just have that as thinking time. So you you come off a call, you come out of a meeting, you've got a little bit of time to reflect, unpack what had just happened, maybe do a little bit of follow up, just have a little bit of space. and then start to mentally prepare for the next activity you've got in your schedule. So I think for me, having that thinking time as a physical entry in my calendar, number one, stops people from putting meetings over the top of that, and number two, just gives me that thinking time to really be a little bit more effective, rather than getting on that hamster wheel of meeting to meeting to meeting.
Yeah, I really like that. Thinking time in the calendar. Great advice. What is a great piece of advice you've received? Some point in life or leadership where someone gave you advice and it really stuck with you?
Well, Jonno, I don't think I'm allowed to swear on your podcast, so let me tone it down a little bit. But it was an old actually. I was fortunate enough a long time ago to work doing some work in the British government, and I had a direct line to Tony Blair. And I have to say, we can say what we want about weapons of mass destruction, but he did a lot in terms of Northern Ireland and the peace treaty in Northern Ireland, and as a leader, he did a lot of interesting things, enough to pick up some really good tips. But he said something to me one day. He said, "Terry, you're doing a great job. Don't F it up." And I think that's probably the best advice I've ever had.
Oh, that's a keeper. That's a great story. That's good advice, isn't it?
Good advice. You're
I
doing a great
appreciate.
job. Don't mess it up.
Yeah, I appreciate that that's and there's something that I think leaders can learn from that as well. That there is a time for being candid, and high performers and great people actually appreciate and take that sort of thing on board. So, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and also kind of not to overthink or maybe make leadership too scientific.
Mm,
You're doing really well. Just keep doing what you do.
yeah, that's good. What's a big struggle or problem that you see leaders in healthcare facing?
Yeah, it's. I think digital transformation and digital disruption is a big one, Jonno, in health and medical research. I think again, to an earlier point, we're probably one of the last industries to go through digital transformation in a significant way that we've seen with retail and banking and financial services, entertainment, and I think for frontline healthcare leaders, the ability to do what they do and run a hospital network, run a GP practice, be a CEO of a medical research institute, whatever that leadership position is, this tsunami of digital technology that's coming at them,
Mm,
the ability to handle that digital transformation and give them the tools that not only they'll need, but their workforce will need. I made a prediction recently that in 10 years' time, every single job that we do in Australia, in whatever industry, will be impacted by artificial intelligence in a small way or a big way.
mm.
And I think that partnership between what we do as humans and as leaders and what the technology can do for us and taking advantage of that technology is we're going to have to raise the digital literacy of our teams and our workforce to handle that and actually to get the benefits out of that technology. So I think a big challenge at the moment is is getting on board with that digital transformation, raising your own game, and then how do you raise the game of your organization?
Yeah, that's they're great thoughts, and definitely can see why that's a challenge in the industry. A movie or TV show that really impacted you?
Oh, interesting. So many, so many. I watch a fair bit of TV and movies. That's kind of my downtime and my de-stress activity is just to throw something on. Sometimes it's quite mindless. Sometimes it's quite meaningful. I think there's probably a couple of movies that stand out for me for different reasons. I think
Mm,
first one is Fargo.
mm,
I think the Coen brothers are absolute geniuses. I think their kind of their dark comedy
yeah.
is really good, and they've made some amazing movies. Fargo stuck with me just because of the intricacies of the plot and the twists and turns, the humor, and I think for me, being able to laugh um, when you're in a very interesting and and often challenging a situation. The ability to potentially see the funny side of it or just have a little chuckle can often help. So Fargo, I think, for that reason. The other one, which I watch probably monthly, I'm a lad from Newcastle in the northeast of England. I haven't lived there for over 20 years, and now I'm living on the other side of the world, and I'm a very proud Geordie. And I was also fortunate enough to be involved in the consortium that recently acquired Newcastle United in the English Premier League. And
Oh,
for someone
wow.
who couldn't afford to buy a ticket when I was a kid for the match,
Wow.
now having a small and modest ownership is outstanding. And the movie is Girl, which is about a kid from Mexico that goes to the US, is a really good soccer player. He gets spotted and gets a trial for Newcastle United. And the movie was done in partnership with Newcastle United. So some of the real players, Alan Shearer, were involved in the movie. The actors run out onto the field when there was a real game going on. So very authentic scenes of football, and it just reminds me of home, and it reminds me of kind of where I've come from, and how proud I am of where I'm from.
Wow, that's a fantastic recommendation, and I love following the Premier League. I that's just made my day hearing that story about you growing up, not being able to, or struggling to afford a ticket, and now being able to be part of that consortium buying Newcastle United. That's so cool. I remember waking up at 5 a.m., when I was, what was I, probably around 8 or 9 or 10 or something around there, and watching Manchester United come back from 1-0 down to beat Bayern Munich in the final of the Champions League. I can't
Ole
remember how
Gunnar
old I was.
Solskjaer comes off the
Yes,
bench and scores
that's right.
the goal. Yeah, absolutely fine. I remember it myself. Yeah, fantastic.
So as most people, when you're watching your sort of your heroes at that age. So ever since then, I've been following Manchester United. Like probably half the world, particularly Australians. Around that time, there wasn't too much over here. It was just 1 hour a week. We'd often get the highlights or we'd get those games live. But yeah, that's I love the Premier League. So incredible to hear that story from you, Terry.
Oh, fantastic.
Although not the best times recently for Manchester United, but we'll
Look,
keep.
it really isn't. It's not doing so well at the moment.
Fascinating from a leadership perspective, though. Have you seen, as a football fan, have you read Sir Alex Ferguson's book about leadership?
I have, yeah,
Yeah.
very interesting, right? Because he can, at least as an onlooker, can be very certainly thought of as very, very intimidating. Certainly, you're not left guessing what's on
That's
his
true.
mind. But as you may recall, the first 2 or 3 years when he took over Manchester United, in this day and age, he wouldn't have been in the job because
Yes.
it took that amount of time for him to be effective.
Mm.
People just have a short attention span now with football managers, but yeah, really interesting to. That is actually probably one of the books that I found particularly interesting from a that's someone that I think you've got a very, very different leadership style to me,
Mm.
but still took a few things away from him.
Yeah, I agree. I feel similarly. One thing that stood out to me from that book was how he talked about the big aha moment he had when he realized he needed to get off the pitch and actually sit in the stands at training and stop being next to the players, and like, not that he never then was on the field, but actually just change his view as a leader to be able to sit back and empower others to do the actual coaching and have a view and perspective of where each player was, rather than being next to them and maybe missing some things, actually having that view. And just some of the ways he delegated and empowered and wouldn't give people tips immediately before the game. That was another thing that really stuck
Yeah,
with me. He wouldn't say,
yeah,
"Now don't forget to," he said, "If I haven't prepared them during the week, then nothing I say now can matter. If anything, it will just actually put pressure on them or throw them off." So he would always go really hard at preparing during the week, but then on the day, sort of not, just say, go and do it, do your best, you'll be great. And I took a
yeah.
lot out of that as a just going, wow, they're just really interesting thoughts that from someone who had a lot of success, and obviously the proof's in the pudding in terms of what he was able to do as a leader. But they were just, interesting sort of thoughts on leadership.
Jonno, there's one quote that really stuck with me out of that book, and it was a little while ago, and I read it, and it's still stuck with me, and I think kind of sums up my style as a leader. Is he said, "I've never played for a draw in my life."
Mm,
He never played for a draw. He always went for the win, and I think that. I like to think that's my style in the business world is don't go out there and play for a draw. A
yeah,
lot of people play it safe, right? A lot of people play it safe. Path of least resistance. I'm not going to make a decision that's controversial. I'm not going to make a decision that's going to piss anyone off. I've got to keep every single person happy. We can be better than that. Don't play for a draw, go out for a win. And if you get a draw, fine, but don't go out with the intention of playing 10 defenders and playing it safe. Go for
yes.
the win. Otherwise, what's the point?
And you never know what can happen at the last minute, right? They definitely learnt that from the number of goals was staggering in
Exactly.
that, because they would always be pushing for that final goal. And I think that's a great leadership lesson too. Even just to keep going. And I was chatting with someone else on the podcast about this idea of the set that I saw. I think it was in a book called Culture Code, the Culture Code, about the San Antonio Spurs and how they had this sign up on their in their training room and in the locker room saying, "Pound the rock." You never know. You hit it 10 times, 20 times, 100 times. The 101st time it breaks, but it only breaks because of the first 100 times. And I think you just keep going, because you never know which decision, which initiative, which project, which team investment you make is going to just make that difference, where you hit a tipping point where you really see that breakthrough.
Yeah, that's a great point, John.
Okay, last question. If you could only give one piece of leadership advice to a young leader, what would you say?
Whoa. I'd probably say this to myself as well on a couple of jobs that I've had in the past, but don't do a job you don't like. Lots of people it seems lots of people are in jobs that they just really don't like.
Mm,
And maybe they don't like it because it's just not a fit for who they are. And I've got, when we had our own software company in Ireland, we had a very low attrition rate, very, very high retention of top talent. And, it didn't matter who in the organization was interviewing someone for a new job in our company. One of the points we always made was, you're not applying for a job, you're applying for a lifestyle. And that didn't mean that your job is your life and the work-life balance isn't going to be right, far from it. But we we want we want you to come into the organization and do this job because it fits who you are as a person.
yeah.
And you don't see it as a job, you see it as an extension of your lifestyle. I've tried to do that in my life with my roles, that if I'm coming into a role, I'm going to treat it as part of my lifestyle, and not as a job. And too many of us, I think, are in jobs. So I think ensure what you do for work aligns with who you are as a person. And I think that way, number one, you're probably going to be better at it, and be more successful. And number two, you're going to enjoy it a little bit more and have a little bit more fun, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I guess the other thing is back to that point about the aliens coming down. And, I get more enjoyment out of being a leader than a manager. I'm a crap manager, John. I'm terrible. That kind of day-to-day operational, task. Here's a list of things that I need to do today. Tick, 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 tick. I've never been good at that. I'm rubbish at that. But I like to think I'm a much better leader than I am a manager. And you need both. And that's why in my organisation, um, I brought in some people who are very, very good at managing to allow me to focus on the leadership side. So, if you're that way inclined, be a leader, not a manager.
Yeah, brilliant. Great advice. I just love that. Where can people find you? Where can people find you online if if they're interested in connecting, LinkedIn, etc., or if they want to find out more about your organization? Where can people connect with you?
Thanks so much, Jonno. In terms of our organisation, we're at dhcrc.com. That's Digital Health Cooperative Research Centre, dhcrc.com. You'll be able to see what's kind of going on with our projects and things we get involved in. I think in terms of me personally, I use Twitter a lot, and I'm at Dr. Terry Sweeney, and LinkedIn as Terry Sweeney as well. Tend to push out and engage a lot with people on both LinkedIn and Twitter, and tend to keep the Instagram and the Facebook just for friends and family.
Yeah, wonderful. Great. Well, I want to thank our listeners for tuning in. This has been a joy of a podcast. I know it would have helped a lot of people and been very thought-provoking for our listeners. Don't forget, I also have the Jonno White Leadership Podcast, where I give you tips on casting vision and building teams, etc. And Leadership Question of the Day, where I put a stone in your shoe with a different question every day to challenge you as a leader. But I want to finish today by saying a massive thank you to Terry, from aliens coming to Earth to the Commonwealth Games to Tony Blair giving you some great advice. It's honestly been so much fun, and I've loved hearing your story, but also the principles at play in your story. I think will encourage and inspire and help a lot of listeners. So thank you for being so generous with your time, Terry.
Jonno, thank you. Really appreciate you having me on, and keep up all of the great work that you do, because I listen to your podcast and it's absolutely fantastic. I learn things a lot. So I would encourage anyone and everyone to tune in and listen to your podcast. So thank you for what you do.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast as much as I did. If you're joining us for the first time, don't forget to check out consultclarity.org. That's our website, consultclarity.org. We have so many free resources on there, including our 7 Questions on Leadership series. We've had more than 1,500 leaders from all over the world in all different roles, in different industries, answer these 7 questions on leadership, and leaders give these in-depth answers around how they spend their time, a book that's been significant for them. It's just a gold mine. It's completely free to access, so go to consultclarity.org and look for that. We'd also love to interview you about your leadership. I believe your experience, your life, your context means that you have advice on leadership that other leaders can learn from. Yes, you. If you're going, not me, well, no, I really believe you would have something to add. So if you're looking for a way to give back, it's completely free to get involved. And we would love to interview you through the 7 Questions on Leadership. You just go to consultclarity.org/7-questions-interest, or Google consultclarity.org 7 questions interest and fill out the form and get involved. We have a free resource on our website called the Leadership Survival Guide. It's a 57-page ebook, 10 world-class leaders giving their thoughts on leadership, and that's completely free. It's available on our homepage, consultclarity.org, right at the top, so make sure you go and get that and download it today. And we have a free daily email that you can subscribe to. We send this out to over 15,000 leaders from around the world. And it contains the highlights of content from our podcasts, our blogs, our books we're reading. It's got the best content, and it gives you exclusive, limited, early access to our masterclasses, workshops, new products, special offers. It's all for our subscribers. You can go to consultclarity.org/subscribe and join 15,000 other leaders. And my gift to you is to work really hard, particularly through the Leadership Conversations podcast. I have been blown away by the quality of the leaders, and I'm learning as much as anyone in doing these interviews. So I'm having a great time And my gift to you is to keep lining up the best leaders I can to invest in your leadership. Your gift to me, if you're finding this helpful, there is something that you could do that would help us out massively. And that is to write a review and to leave a rating for our podcast or wherever you're watching or listening to this. I can't tell you how much that helps us out. Also, subscribe or follow. It really does make a difference in helping us to help more leaders become everything they're meant to be. Another thing that means a lot to me personally is when I see our community share our content. So if you do share this or any other piece of content on social media, then thank you and please do that. And look for me, Jonno White or Clarity, and tag us in your post. Our team is always looking for posts to engage with from our community. And there's also a chance that we'll share your content to go beyond and share it with our followers. Last of all, you can check out my book. It's called Step Up or Step Out: How to Deal with Difficult People Even If You Hate Conflict. I wrote this book because 50% of the coaching sessions I have with leaders, this topic comes up again and again and again. And it's this idea of, how do I have this difficult conversation? How do I lead this person better when I'm finding them difficult? Or in some cases, you look and you say, I think I might be leading a difficult person. They're just quite difficult to lead, or I'm finding them quite difficult to lead. So there's a 3-step process that I unpack in Step Up or Step Out. And the amazing thing, and I've literally done this myself, and I've heard it anecdotally from other leaders as I've coached them, is that if you follow this process, you will see that person step up and change their behavior or make a decision, which is to step out some of the time. 95% of the time, people will step up or step out in just 4 weeks. And I stand by that. It's you have to read the book to understand, but I really do believe in it, and I've experienced it firsthand. It works. So you can go to Amazon, look up Step Up or Step Out Jonno White, or store.consultclarity.org/book. Well, thank you so much for listening. We're going to be back with a new episode next time of the Leadership Conversations podcast. And I hope today has helped you to take another step towards becoming the leader you're meant to be. See you next time.